Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is July 18th. On this day in 1989, a young woman who was full of promise was taken far too soon when Rebecca Schaeffer was murdered outside of her Los Angeles apartment. She was just 21 years old. Her death wasn't the result of a robbery or a random act of violence. It was something far more terrifying. An obsessed fan who crossed the line between admiration and delusion. His act of violence changed the national conversation about privacy and safety forever. Today, we're looking back at the heartbreaking murder of Rebecca Schaeffer, a crime that shocked the nation and led to lasting change in how we protect individuals, especially those in the public eye. Let's get started. Rebecca Lucille Schaeffer was born on November 6, 1967 in Eugene, Oregon. She was the only child of Benson and Dana Schaeffer, a psychologist and a professor who raised her in a loving, intellectually curious household. Rebecca's path to the spotlight wasn't accidental. From a young age, she was drawn to the arts. After dabbling in modeling as a teenager, Rebecca set her sights on acting and moved to Los Angeles. Her big break came in 1986 when she landed the role of Patty Russell on the CBS sitcom My Sister Sam, starring opposite Pam Dauber. The show became an instant hit, and Rebecca's bright, relatable energy made her a fan favorite. Off camera, she was just as endearing. Colleagues said that she was grounded, thoughtful, and driven by a genuine love for her craft. She cared about social issues and had a quiet, sincere interest in making a difference. Not just in showbiz, but in the world. By 1989, with a string of TV and film appearances under her belt, Rebecca was on the cusp of major stardom. But somewhere, someone was watching her with much darker intentions. In Tucson, Arizona, a man named Robert John Bardo had been watching My Sister Sam, and he became fixated on Rebecca. Bardo, who was only 19, was already battling severe mental illness. He had a history of obsessive behavior and had previously tried to contact other celebrities, including Debbie Gibson and Madonna. But for reasons only he truly understood, it was Rebecca who became the center of his world. He wrote her fan letters, one of which Rebecca kindly responded to, sending him a signed photo. It was a small, sweet gesture from an actress to a fan. But to Bardo, it meant something much more. He began to believe that they shared a real connection, but it was one that lived only in his mind, not in reality. That fantasy began to unravel when Bardo saw Rebecca in a new film, Scenes from a Class Struggle in Beverly Hills. In it, she had a brief scene in bed with another actor. To most viewers, it was just a role, part of her growth as a serious actress. But to Bardo, it shattered his imagined image of her. In his disturbed mind, she had betrayed him. That twisted sense of betrayal turned into rage, and then it turned into a plan. Bardo believed that Rebecca needed to be punished for, quote, becoming another Hollywood whore, end quote. July 18th, 1989 was a sunny Tuesday morning in Los Angeles. Earlier that day, Bardo had flown to LA. He was carrying a copy of Catcher in the Rye, which he had underlined with angry, erratic notes. In his pocket was a .357 caliber handgun. He had tracked down Rebecca's home address by paying a private investigator $250 to access her DMV records, something that, at the time, was perfectly legal. It was also a trick that he had learned from another obsessed fan. In 1982, Arthur Richard Jackson had stalked and stabbed Teresa Saldana. He had used the same method to get her address. That day, Bardo showed up at Rebecca's building on North Sweetser Avenue just after 10 a.m. and rang the buzzer. Rebecca, who was expecting a courier to deliver a copy of the script for Godfather 3, answered the door. But the man who met her did not have a script for her audition. Instead, he had the letter she had written to him and the photo that she had signed. She was polite, but clearly uncomfortable. She asked him not to come back and shut the door. But he did come back, just 45 minutes later, after grabbing breakfast at a nearby diner. This time, when Rebecca opened the door, Bardo pulled out the gun and shot her in the chest. The bullet pierced her heart. She collapsed right inside the entryway. Neighbors heard the shot and rushed to call 911. Paramedics arrived quickly and transported her to Cedars-Sinai Hospital, but the damage was too great. Just 30 minutes after she arrived, Rebecca Schaeffer was pronounced dead. She was just 21 years old. The day after the murder, police in Tucson spotted a disheveled man wandering the streets, waving his arms, muttering to himself. It was Robert Bardo, and he quickly confessed to killing Rebecca Schaeffer. When investigators searched his home and backpack, they found diary entries that chronicled his obsession. He had drawn hearts around her name. He also wrote that he was going to punish her. There was no doubt this had been a premeditated attack. During the trial, Bardo's defense attorney didn't try to deny the murder. Instead, they focused on his mental health, claiming that he suffered from schizophrenia and delusional thinking. Dr. Park Dietz, a renowned forensic psychiatrist, testified that Bardo saw himself on a mission from God. In 1991, after a bench trial, Robert John Bardo was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. He remains behind bars in California to this day. The murder of Rebecca Schaeffer stunned the nation, not just because of its senselessness, but because of what it revealed. That a complete stranger could access your address from government records, show up at your home, and take your life. Her death sparked a nationwide reckoning. In 1990, California became the first state to pass anti-stalking legislation. This was followed by many other states. Then, in 1994, the federal government passed the Driver's Privacy Protection Act, closing the loophole that allowed anyone to access DMV records without a valid reason. It was a landmark shift in privacy law, and it happened because of Rebecca. In Hollywood, the grief was profound. Pam Dauber, Rebecca's co-star, was devastated. Brad Silberling, her boyfriend at the time, later wrote and directed Moonlight Mile, a film that was inspired by the relationship and the aftermath of loss. Rebecca Schaeffer had so much left to give. Her promising career, her generous spirit, and her bright future were all stolen in the blink of an eye. But because of her, and because of the work that was done in her name, lives have been saved. Laws have changed, and privacy, at least in some ways, is taken more seriously than it was before July 18th, 1989. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found Rebecca's story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!